So, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
she's in there. I'm gonna go ahead. It's 5:15. All right. Good afternoon. I'd like to call this special call budget review meeting to order at 5:15. That's my tab.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we are here just to take a quick look at the budget and make some adjustments that we really we need to make in order to get things properly aligned. And Erica's gonna go over and talk to us about each of the items. And the two charts that you see are the charts that we prepared for your consideration. And the only difference between the two charts would be in chart, I'm not looking at the charts, but chart B, there are two additional items that are not necessary. You don't have to do them, but and that's the one-time pay adjustment and the extended learning opportunity, which we really would like to have those items. However, the items that you see in the first chart are really things that we have to take care of. So I'm gonna turn it over to Erica so she can walk us through.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Afternoon.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through the items that are in the chart. And as Ms. Fury stated, Chart A, these items are things that when we prepared the budget back in the spring, the circumstances have since changed, and so we need to adjust our budget to cover some things now. And then in Chart B, there are two additional items that we don't have to do. That would be up to you all if we wanted to do that or not. So in the first chart, what we have, the adjustments that we have are for, the first thing is for proximity learning, and that is a service that we use to help to fill vacancies in our classrooms so that our classrooms are just not sitting with subs in them. They actually have a certified teacher through this company teaching the course. And so we did budget a little bit in the spring budget, but as we began to look at the start of the school year, we realized that we had more vacancies than we had planned for, and so we are using proximity learning a little bit more. And so we'll need those additional funds to cover that service for this year. We do need to add a little bit more money for substitutes based on the current usage up to date. I projected out based on that, and we are a little bit short in the budget in that area. So we need to add about $75,000 for substitutes. Athletic supplements, when we increased our salaries in the spring, our athletic supplements, there is a portion of those supplements that are based on a daily rate, and we did not adjust the supplement budget for that daily rate. So we do need to add some funds to cover athletic supplements for the entire year. For for that component that is a daily rate component for some supplements, some athletic supplements. In October, there were some additional assistant principal positions that were added, and so we do need to add funding to the budget to cover those positions. After the start of the fiscal year, we were informed that there were going to be some budget cuts to our non-QBE state grants. So those are our categorical grants that we have. And so for this year, it's 4%. And so that amounts to about $50,000. And those grants mainly cover salaries. And so instead of having to, cut someone's salary mid-year, we would like to use funding from our general fund to cover those budget cuts. We also have in here funding for a textbook adoption. This is something that we are looking forward to do in the spring/summer for the next year. So we're not going to actually spend the money today. It's just putting the money aside so that we'll have it when we do get ready to do the adoption. And then the last amount there, the $437,000, when we did the budget in the spring, we budgeted for our interest payments to come out of debt service fund. And we have always done that. And the reason that we have always done that is because we've always received motor vehicle tax revenue in the debt service fund. There was a change in the law, and so now we don't receive those funds in the debt service anymore. We receive them in the general fund. So we need to transfer some money from the general fund to cover those payments that were budgeted in the debt service fund for the FY20 year. And so that will be a one-time, and then going forward, we would know how to budget it based on the change that was made in the law this year. So those are all the things that are included in Chart A, the adjustments that we really need to make to our budget. In Chart B, all of those same adjustments are there. And then there is a one-time pay adjustment of 1% also in Chart B for $1.1 million. And there is a one-time cost for extended learning opportunities of $400,000. And so that's the difference between the two charts. If there are any questions, I can take them now.
Yes, I have a question, but clarify it a little bit. The last comment that you made in Chart A, where the budget changed, and now we have to take the funds out of the general fund and put it here, right?
Yes.
Is that what you said? Go over that again, please.
Okay. We used to receive motor vehicle tax revenue, what they call the birthday tax. We used to receive that in the debt service fund from the tax commissioner. We no longer receive that money, or we do, but it's very, very little, not enough to cover a debt service payment. So the money is now put in the general fund. When the tax commissioner sends it to us, it's deposited into the general fund because that's what we have to do by law. And so because that change was made after we did the budget, we budgeted these expenses to come out of debt service, but there's no money there to cover it because the funds are now being put in the general fund. So we need to transfer that money from the general fund to debt service to pay it.
Okay. Thank you much.
Anybody else have any questions?
Just, the textbook adoption you said for was what? I missed, you may have said it. English?
Elementary.
Elementary English?
You got some, am I on board? Can I get on board? I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, that's fine.
The substitute pay, $70,000. That's not the base, this is an additional, correct?
Yes.
When you say additional,
Substitute.
do you
pay.
mean as in changing the pay rate? Is that what you mean?
Well, that's my second question.
Okay.
It doesn't seem like it's very much. So what is that rate that we're paying ourselves? I know we adjusted it sometime last year, I don't know. We upped it a little bit.
Yes, we
Any
did.
clue what that is now?
$75.
How much?
The highest is 75, and then, what is it?
65.
70.
With the high school diploma, 70 if they have a degree, and then if they're certified, $75.
Per day.
Yes.
And then we do if they are retired from the school system, they get $110. So we're trying to get them to come back and work.
And so this is additional, this is in addition to what was already budgeted. So
I-
this is not the base, this is additional.
Well, I understand, but I thought, we predicated this that we didn't have enough funds in the substitute kitty, so to speak. And $70,000 is not a lot of money,
Yeah.
in my view.
Yeah.
So maybe, the second question is, maybe we should review what we're paying them in order to help us get them, because I know they're going elsewhere. And so we need to stop that drain. And one of them may be the increase the substitute rate so that we can get our share of substitutes that's available.
I've got a question though. Why are we planning on using more substitutes this year?
Well, with the number of vacancies,
Well, people leaving due to illness and family medical leave is a little bit higher than in the past. So we've had to resort to using more substitutes, unfortunately.
Is it statewide or is it just us?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I guess my question is sort of to piggyback on Mr. Johnson's. You know, is it a substitute shortage, so to speak, or is it, you know, do we need to adjust that pay rate, or is it need to adjust the employees in general? I mean, how else can we solve that?
Yeah, I think I would, before I would make a statement, I'd want to do a survey of what's happening around us in terms of substitute pay. I haven't looked at it recently. I did all of that a few years ago, 2 years ago, I think. And the other thing is you have to remember that the state is not giving you any money for substitutes, so you're funding that completely local. So once you raise the rate, if there's a change in your tax digest, you could experience some trouble in the future. That's one of the things that we're, you know, as a public education community that we've talked about in terms of the state funding, that they need to increase the amount of money that they send for substitutes so that we can not rely completely on the local digest to fund that. So I would, before I would answer, I would want to take a quick look at it.
I'm just sort of
Yeah.
spewing things as I
Yeah.
talk. No, I just, you know, like I said, I would like to see if there's a reason why we need so many more substitutes, and if there's something else that we can do to deter that need.
I'm sorry, Abigail.
No,
Cut
you're
y'all.
good. I'm
No,
good.
I agree with that because I see an issue here for me. And my issue is the increase in the sub, but then there's an increase in proximity learning, but you mentioned FMLA. And so, but proximity learning is if we don't have teachers in place, so then it's increased in both areas where one should solve the other. Let me finish. But then also, Erica, in your presentation, you said that they're using it a little bit more. And so now I have a concern, because if I'm going to increase this, and I know of situations where building leaders have not used it, or building leader has not used it, and there's been a teacher vacant, then what would make me increase that amount? Because they didn't use it to begin with. So how can I be assured that they're gonna use it now?
So let me go answer question one. Proximity learning only provides a certificated educator electronically. So there still has to be someone in the room to monitor behavior and sort of do the classroom work. So this, even though you're using proximity learning as the certificated person, you still have to have a sub in the room to monitor. So that
The double whammy.
it is. It's still less expensive than a teacher's salary, but you're paying for a sub and you're paying to have someone in the classroom who is certificated in the content area, as opposed to having a sub who's not. And so that's why you would have an
Both.
increase in both.
Okay, so that answers that question. But again, how can I be assured, if they're not using it now, what is gonna make me invest more money in it and be assured that they're gonna use it?
Ms. Sanders, I think.
Excuse me, I'm trying to get to understanding your question. Oh, you're saying that they're not filling the position with the sub when there's a need to do it?
No, if there's a vacancy in a classroom, and then we have proximity learning, but there have been situations where it's been more than one vacancy, and this has not been used.
The proximity
then-
learning hasn't been
Right.
used?
Mhm. So what would make me invest more money and give y'all a yes for this when it's not being used now? Like, that's not on that person's priority list.
Let me try it, please. I think we're trying to, I see it as the proximity learning is increasing the value or the productivity of the teachers, not to fill a job slot. Am I saying that correctly?
the proximity learning provides us with a certificated teacher who is in California.
Productivity.
And she or he is coming to
We
us
don't
live.
have a teacher in the classroom.
Correct, when there's no teacher in the classroom.
So
So we'd
what
rather
I'm
there be a
saying
teacher in
is
the
been
classroom.
situations where there has not been teachers in the classroom and it was not used.
Do certain subjects qualify for that? I mean, do we use the proximity learning just for certain subjects?
Ms. Sanders, do you want to?
I couldn't remember how much was budgeted, but I believe there was a small amount
It-
that was.
There was
budgeted.
$100,000
won't cover it.
budgeted for it, and we've already spent 60% of that, just in the classrooms that we have. So the number that you see here is based on the services that we already have, not a potential vacancy that, a building is not using. This is based on the amount, what we already have, and we know we're gonna have to pay it.
But I also understand what you're asking, though. But Ms. Henderson Baker is saying she knows of some situations where there were vacancies in a classroom, and we didn't use proximity learning to fill those. We had a substitute in those classrooms rather than putting proximity learning in place. And so I think our practice is that especially if it's in an area that is a tested area, so, we want to get somebody in there as quickly as possible. But all principals know when there's a vacancy. Maybe in the beginning of the year, it wasn't quite understood, but I think they all understand now. When you have a vacancy, you call Ms. Sanders. Ms. Sanders then works with proximity to get you a teacher in your classroom. That's what they should be doing, unless they have some other viable option where they may have a substitute who is certificated in the field and they're using that person in place. And I don't think that covers your situation. But there are other cases throughout the district where they have a live person who happens to be a retired teacher, and we would much rather use that person than proximity learning. So they just have to go through Ms. Sanders and request that they have the option to use proximity learning. We're not turning them down. Because I just feel much better having a certificated individual in the classroom.
Yeah, I like the fact that it exists, I
Yeah.
do. But my issue is, if it's not being used, what's gonna make me say yes to it now?
Right.
That's the same thing when Infinite Campus come back. What's gonna make me say yes? So what are you guys doing to make sure that it is being used?
Well, Cousins Middle School and Liberty Middle School both had one, but those ended when they found someone to fill the position. Because what they do is post the job at the same time that they use proximity learning. Eastside just had their teacher come back from family medical leave who was out from the beginning of the year, so that one has ended. And then Newton has math and Spanish, and her Mixon had a fourth grade position, and they just hired a teacher. So in each instance, they have been looking for a teacher, but in the meantime, they've used proximity learning.
But you have to know that it's vacant, correct?
Yes, yes, and we work with them on it. If they say they have a certified teacher, then obviously we're not going to contact proximity learning because it does take them time to find someone and we don't want them to go through that process. In some cases, I will reach out, work with them, and then the principal will find someone and then we cancel the services. So I just want to make sure that when we start off in the process that they do in fact need the person before we move forward and bring them on board.
And that's the other thing too, that's nice about proximity learning. You pay by the need, so you're not having to pay for someone for an entire school year. If indeed you find a qualified person to fill the position, the services end at that point in time, and there's no penalty or any of those things. So you're just paying for the service at the time you need the service. I'm sure there are isolated situations where principals are not using proximity learning, but I know what your situations are, but I don't think that is something that is pervasive across the district. Our team knows, our response, if you have a teacher who is out, we want to use proximity learning, and that's what we push, because I need to have someone who knows what they're doing in the classrooms, especially in the areas of science, math, social studies, and English. And then, of course, when we have special education classrooms that need teachers as well, we use them for that as well. So I guess to answer your question, if you don't approve the transition, then we're kind of hamstrung, and we'll have substitutes in classes, and we will not have we won't have access to the certificated person via the smart board or internet and the laptops and computers, because we won't be able to fund them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with it,
Yeah.
but again, going back, what is being done to ensure that the building leaders are using it? Because the flip side of that is, I thought the building leader, when they got 20-something people in the classroom, that we're supposed to be providing educational excellence to all students,
Absolutely.
and nothing is being done about the fact that they did not utilize this.
So I guess,
Isn't that, excuse me, I'm sorry,
I'm sorry.
a time element, reasonable to do it, if you know the teacher's gonna be out for, just name a name, 6 days.
No, we wouldn't.
Well, you wouldn't go for that. And
No.
yes, that principal, you may come by and observe that room has no proximity person or no sub. It's realistic, that's what's happening. So I don't know if we shouldn't get too excited about because we don't have one. Just make sure when we got one, that the resources there to get it.
Well, I think the process that Ms. Fury just talked about is clearly articulated now to all of the principals. And so they know that if they have a need, they're to follow that process. And as she said, we've spent 60% of the budget to the amount, so they are using it, now more and more. And of course, some of them probably wanted to see how it worked in some of the other buildings first.
But
so
now,
they
Mr.
talk-
Roundtree, we got a responsibility.
I understand, but in the places that have requested them, that we put them there, and they all know now the process that has been articulated.
Okay.
that was gonna be my question. Is this a new service offered this year in our budget?
We did it last year.
Last year? So it's,
Sparingly.
okay.
We
Wasn't-
pilot-
They should all know about it. All right, so,
Yeah.
new service, nope. The school leader, the building leader has the authority to make this call?
Well,
Yes, and they contact me and talk about it.
So that's
But
the
length of
process.
time and the duration that they need the person,
yes.
all of that has to be spelled out up front before.
Okay, so the authority is clear, the process is clear. My last question then would be, in the process, are we utilizing the camera system where we're able to, unless we're in a situation where the content is only available by one teacher who happens to be out, are we able to record another class and play it in that class and utilize the equipment we already have to the fullest? Okay, well, if all that's being done and we still have classes without this being utilized, then I'm with you. I don't want to approve something that's not being used across the
I just
board.
need to know, that there is a procedure in place when they are not using it.
So I guess that's where we're at. If there's some follow-up to certainly the instances that you are aware of, then maybe we can,
And
I
not
would
a
move forward with it if
conversation
it's gonna,
of, we need to use it,
yeah.
because we got a responsibility.
Well, I'm stuck on the fact that I'm convinced that we are not competitive in our substitute in hiring them. I can just tell you, I know some cars that come down my street, and I know the color of that cars. I know exactly where they're going. And in talking to them, they talk pay and morale, and that's driving my thought and my comments.
Well, we'll look at it and bring something back in the budget time in the spring. We'll have an opportunity to do a survey of surrounding districts, look at what the pay is, identify where we are, and then make some recommendations with the full knowledge of the amount of money that the state sends. And so I'll go back and do those charts like I did before that will give you the information. So whatever decision you want to make, you can make.
I remember those charts. But
Yeah,
one-
they were good. They were good
Right,
charts.
right. But one of the negatives that I brought out of that, when we compare with location A or B, I don't think we put enough in there to be distinct in that this is what, we want to be the leader. If you're talking about getting people in his pay, well, we don't want to kick it up, just use an example, $3 an hour, and that's going to bring in 2 or 3% increase, and it's not going to be competitive when you do the increase. We have to go look at it, and by George, put the money in the paycheck of our substitute teachers. And let's be, I know you got a budget, don't get me wrong. Let's be the leader
Sure.
in substitute pay, so
We
we
just
can
have to look
resolve.
to see what other people are doing so that we
Well, I
know what
don't
the
care what
leader
they're
looks
doing.
like.
I just don't care what they're doing. I know what's happening here in Newton.
Yeah, but
And I
what
don't
I'm-
make my decisions, comment support it based on what's happening in another district. I do not do that.
Well, you
Because
have to,
we
Mr. Johnson.
are the best.
You want to make sure that you pay people, if you're talking about being the leader, you got to know what the other districts are paying, so.
I understand that, but
That's what
we
we'll
take
do.
it too far and don't do it.
No, we did pretty good the last time.
Pretty good, I remember.
We did good. We did good, and we'll look at it and
Okay,
bring
well,
it
you
back.
come back and
Yeah,
help us out on that
I
one.
have a
Sure.
question about this one too. Go ahead.
All right, on the same subject, I think we want our teachers to show up. That's what we
Yes.
really want to see happen.
we need teachers.
So we don't have to do
come forward.
proximity learning, so we don't have to pay our substitutes more, but
Yes.
sure, if they're out, we want to pay them, we want to get them in, the good
Yes.
people in the room. But so about this 1% increase across the board, is there a way to incentivize our teachers who have good attendance? If the teachers we have, we want to be in the room, what if we split that 1% up to incentivize people to actually be there? Maybe they get a bonus if they're miss less than 5 days. I'm just throwing stuff out, whatever is a good number. To then say, hey, some people will qualify for this if you show up every day.
I would
Rather
have
than
to
just
check
pay it
with
all
the-
across the board, and then we still gotta increase our sub pay, because we're gonna be
Yeah.
competitive there, gotta increase our,
Maybe a labor issue.
I would have, yeah, I think there would be some teacher retirement issues that would prohibit us from doing that. So I would have to talk to Phil again. I think I've already talked to him one time about doing, attendance, incentives, and if I'm not mistaken, and I could be mistaken, it's been a while, there is a teacher retirement issue with doing that, and you forfeit your teacher retirement days
Yes.
for the pay that you receive with attendance bonus type thing. So there is a legal issue with doing that, sorry. It's a great idea, we've thought about it, but there is definitely
so we have a teacher shortage,
yeah.
the state's taking money from us, and the
And they
law
don't give you
says
enough
we can't
money.
incentivize our people.
So that's my
Attendance.
next issue, what you just said. The state is taking, and not to cut you off, Mr. Bailey, but the state is taking money from us, and you just said, and they don't give us enough money. So
For
the last
substitutes.
for subs, for the last 2 years, they have fully funded education for the
At-
first time in a
At
long
the
time.
1985 rates.
Yeah,
So
so
we're still
let's go
behind.
here. So why is this 1%? I know y'all said it's your choice, but I'm curious to know, you guys are listening to the dialogue and the conversations that the governor is having centered around education, right?
Yes.
And the funding of education, right?
Don't pay him no attention.
So I'm just curious to
Meaning
know
what?
why this 1% is in here, because
There's potential for it to get cut, is what you're saying.
it's going to. Mhm.
There's potential for it to get cut.
Well, he hasn't given us any indication that he's gonna tinker with QBE. If he does, that's like looking in the crystal ball, trying to predict what he's going to do. And he's also said that, he's trying to fulfill his promise of $5,000
Yes,
for
and he's searching
teachers.
for the other two, and
Yes.
he's trying to restructure departments like
Mhm.
GOSA and stuff like that.
Yes.
Which would say there's a
And-
funding issue, there's a dual enrollment funding issue.
Yes.
There's a number of things that he has named, and I know for myself, in a dialogue that I had in a closed room, I don't feel comfortable with this.
You don't feel comfortable with what?
The 1%. I
What, should be
don't.
3?
Well, this is a one time, it's not a permanent.
I
This isn't-
get that. I get that. I
So this
don't-
would now have to be sustained?
No.
It's just
What are we
One time.
talking about as dollars an average teacher?
It's $1.1 million, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
What does equate to, the number of teachers that this will be allocated?
Haven't we done
What
this
are we
closer
talking
to
about?
spring when we were nervous about it one time?
No, we normally do it in December. due to
But there was
January.
one time we did it going right before spring break, because people emailed us about they were getting ready to go on spring break trips and stuff, and this came right on time. That's the only time we've done it before. Because I remember an email that somebody sent about their Disney World trip, and I was like,
Mine
okay.
went, I've got it for it was the fall, the February winter break was when they were having all that.
Okay,
It wasn't the spring break.
Okay.
That's the email that I got.
We're
okay,
just-
maybe it was February.
And we're just hearing from people in the workforce, and so, I'm also trying to be responsive to the folks that we do employ. And if you'll remember, when you look at the salary charts, we're not number one in terms of salary with the districts that we compare to. We're number 4 in number 5, but really, most of the time, number 4. And so this is just another opportunity. It's just an idea. It is, you know, you don't have to do it, but I wanted to definitely make sure that we at least heard it, and you don't have to approve it. We can say no, and that'll be the end of that.
Well, I got
I
some
do
things
wish,
on
though, that with the $400,000, that's for children, and for teachers, again, so you're talking about teacher salary to work with kids in extended learning opportunities, which runs the gamut from remediation, from enrichment.
But they
you know.
gotta be here. I'm like Mr. Bailey.
What do you mean?
The teachers gotta be here.
Oh, I agree
I
that
think
they
she's
have to be here,
Switched over to the ELO, the 400,000.
so.
What are we talking about? Can you?
Is it around 12? It was 1.1, he was saying over the total number of teachers, is it about 1,200 teachers?
Well, this is
What's the
for
what's-
everybody.
For everybody.
This is for 2,700 employees.
I don't want to know the average, what's the pay for the employee,
Oh,
period?
employees.
What's going to go in the paycheck?
It
On
depends
average.
on your total salary.
Right.
Yeah.
So it will be different for everybody across the system, so depending upon their years of experience and all that. So at any rate, in aggregate, it's $1.1 million. And,
How can we compete the base if we don't know the input?
what?
How can we compute 1.1 million?
I have it by person, just not here with me right now, but I do have it by person. I calculated it by person.
Yeah, so
Oh,
she's
okay.
got a spreadsheet that has it all in there.
Well, you got the answers then.
The answer key,
It's an aggregate. so.
somewhere in there.
But again, and to Ms. Henderson Baker's point about, you know, being cautious, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be cautious. You know, there are lots of things that need to be considered as we move into the regular season. This is a budget review for consideration of things that we need to make adjustments for in order to keep moving forward, but then also to consider some additional things that we feel will be beneficial to our staff and then to our students. But we also have a classified, non-certificated salary study that's going on. We did an organizational study last year in the spring, and we haven't completed the work that's connected to that. And we also, our enrollment is down a little bit, so those numbers will impact you in 18 months, the funding that's associated with that. I'm missing something here. What am I missing?
The restructure, we're phasing in positions.
Yeah,
under
yeah.
that.
But you don't want to, I wouldn't recommend phasing them in over doing something that is more important than that. So I would probably hold off on them another year. The organizational chart's not going to change unless we feel like it's the best time to do it. So I would want to examine that in the spring. But those are things that are swirling around in the conversation about the general budget in its entirety. And of the 6%
6% budget cut.
from the state categorical funds, that will play a role in, even though it's not a QBE cut, we do get grants from the state, so that impacts CTAE, professional learning.
I'm sorry, is that gonna be on top of the 4% we already got cut? Is it gonna be total
It'll-
10% next year?
No, it'll be 6%,
So up 2 more
yeah,
percent?
up to more, yeah, so.
So that,
But it's also up in the air, so they're not really committing to it in its entirety.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are lots of things when you do, when you prepare the budget, and, you know, there were other things that we could have added to this document that we elected not to, in an effort to try to do something that acknowledges the request from our employees, and at the same time, provide services for our students. But, you know, it's nothing, it's a recommendation, and it's,
are you leaning towards chart B?
my recommendation would be Chart B, but if y'all are not gonna be able to support Chart B, then,
I understand.
you know, we've got a week in between this meeting and next meeting to make any kinds of adjustments that we need to make.
And you know, we like to add all the way to chart H.
I know,
So-
I know. But I think the parts at the top, that's the thing, is that it's so, the things that you see already are just things that we really need to do. The only thing that's sort of discretionary would be the extended learning opportunity funds for kids and then the 1%. In the absence of that, there's not a whole lot of chart building that we can do, you know?
Is this our third textbook adoption this year? Would this be our third or
No. In 3 years, yeah.
third in 3 years?
So-
Well, but I'm saying for ELA, it's past time. Because this is my 5th year, and we've had the same resources
Materials.
I've been here.
Yeah. I just,
Because we put it off.
I feel like these come up in this meeting rather than in the budget meeting. Like, shouldn't that be regular part of our operating budget, these
Yeah.
textbook adoption?
We're just making sure that it's set aside so that it's there when it's time, and we'll start looking in the spring to get ready for the.
I think what I'm saying is, can we prioritize textbook adoption into our regular budget and then have these conversations about raises and things like that at this meeting?
Yeah.
If textbook
got it.
adoption pops into this meeting every time, I feel like we're not prioritizing it where it should be.
Well, the reason that it popped in the last time was because we did not know the textbook company was no longer producing the books.
But this time,
And this time, we're trying to get ready for the ELA, that's all.
okay.
So I get you, I hear what you're saying. So
All right.
yes, that, the goal is that it's in the spring budget, and it's all where it needs to be. But it wasn't enough last year,
Mhm.
and this year, we're just setting it aside to get ready,
Okay,
okay?
thanks.
But so I hear you. We won't try to put it in this meeting if we can.
I have requested some information. After-school program,
Yes,
we've lost some of the input in terms of revenue.
yes,
And some of
3
our,
schools,
some of our schools don't have after-school programs.
correct.
Why don't we put some funds in the kitty so that we can maintain our after-school program?
Well, we actually talked about that in our meeting, and so in order for our budget to fund those 3 schools, it would be a lot of money, and it would be a lot of money to try to sustain it. And so part of the conversation with this extended learning opportunity money was for the 3 schools impacted, which are Middle Ridge, Porterdale, and Newton High School, that there would be a multiplier on those 3 schools. So let's just say every school gets $10. Those 3 schools would get a multiplier that would increase it because they didn't get that grant that they should have received. And we went back and forth with the state because there was really discrepancies in inter-rater reliability, and we were very frustrated with that. And so we kind of felt like we could accommodate the fact that they didn't have that. And they've done some things with their title funds already to try to make up the difference with the loss of the 21st Century Grant. But we're still looking to try to help them. So we thought about that, Mr. Johnson.
Well, I hear you, but I didn't hear what I wanted to hear.
Well,
We're going to put the program back in, so they'll have that after-school program. And we'll fight with the funding as we go forward. But put those kids back in classroom after school, period.
Well, I think, and Dr. Thomas, correct me if I'm wrong, but because they were federally funded, wouldn't it become supplanting if, in the absence of those funds, the district puts the funds in, then would they be able to get the federal grant again?
Right, we do have to consider a supplanting issue, just because of the original funding source. So there's some other red tape on the federal line for us to get approval to use general funds because we have used the federal funds before. So Mr. Roundtree is certainly correct that could be a supplanting issue for us to use those federal, the general funds because it was a federally funded program. And the 21st Century Program, or the ASAP program, both are federally funded programs.
I hear you, and I don't mean to sound negative, but I know it's coming out that way. I understand what you're saying clearly. But I think this should be a priority as to how we handle it. And get the government to make a decision. Either use the pot or get up, you know?
And we have tried to, from the standpoint of Title I, work with those schools, and certainly they have looked at the needs within their schools to see whether using the Title I funds is the most appropriate manner to kind of fill in those gaps and have those safety nets. So I know all three of the schools, they have looked at whether it's a Saturday program or an after-school program or before-school program to see if they can address the needs of the students. I understand what you're saying, it doesn't completely replace what was already in place, but those schools are looking at supplemental programs to allow students the opportunity to have childcare as well as educational, academic and non-academic enrichment opportunities through other avenues.
Well, I understand the fact that if you're going to use local funds to sponsor a federal funded program, you get supplanting issues. But how can we fund it, and it's being repetitive here, locally, and keep it going without breaking the law? I'm saying, I haven't heard that yet. That's what,
Because you
You
can't.
can't. Because once you infuse local money into a federal program, because the question that the feds ask is, what do you do in the absence of federal funds? So if you, in the absence of, once they take the funding and you put your money in, then they're like, well, you should have been doing this all along.
Right.
And so when they go back to reapply, once you have infused it with your local money, then it becomes supplanting, because then you take your money away and then you put their money back in. And so once you pull something out of a federal program and fund it with some other dollars, then you have a supplanting issue.
okay,
Do we know what it costs per school? Is it different per school?
To fund an after-school program,
Yeah.
that information I don't know right offhand, but I could get it for you.
Yeah, it's a lot. It was millions of, over the
school.
life of the grant, yeah.
but we're
It
just
was a
talking
sore-
about 3 schools, we're not talking about.
And those were the 3 schools in that one grant.
So
Yeah, that's what I'm
millions
talking
for
about.
those 3 schools.
Yeah,
Well, the millions are to the length of the program.
yeah, over
It's
the
not-
term of the
It's not
grant.
millions to operate per year,
Right.
probably something like.
But the problem is that once you put the 300,000 or 600,000 towards it,
You're not gonna
then
get
when
federal.
you then trying to apply for the grant later on is problematic, because you're already funding it with local dollars. So, you can do that, but then you just need to go on and get ready to just keep sustaining that.
When can we apply for the grant again?
21?
The 21-22 school
Yeah.
year, I believe.
Yeah, they're like on hiatus or something right now. There's some catches with the federal dollars, so. Yeah, we were frustrated too with them.
But we're working towards trying to find a solution to, so
Oh,
those students
absolutely.
are not
Yes,
Absolutely.
hanging out to dry, so to speak, so.
yes. Yep.
Okay.
It's a lot to consider, team.
We spent a lot of time, a lot of time talking about it too, so,
Sure you have.
just trying to do the right things.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, if we don't have any questions, then we finish the session, we can adjourn. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned 5:59.
Thank you, guys.
Y'all want a motion to go in executive session? 5:59.
So move.
We don't need that, do we?
Yeah, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, move in second, all in favor? Okay.
I don't really want to.
I'm trying to read the directions, but we're already in the meeting.
Yeah.
What's here?
Yeah, to adjourn the special
I
call.
bad question.
I wrote your notes down.
But I need some accountability measures.